because one metal is favored over another. I mean, technically, the dollar is now under a gold standard. Today, we're going to talk about what JPMorgan did this week, moving 14.2 million ounces, which Chris talked about with Andy Schefman in a great interview, and he explained some things that I didn't even understand about that. We're going to go into that, and who delivered to who today, or yesterday was it, when silver and palladium deliveries just started for the September contracts, or what happened to those 2,150 contracts worth of silver that JPMorgan put up for sale last week. In short, the banks are buying, the clients are selling, the banks are hoarding warrants, at least if not physical supply. SLV holdings keep falling. A Palladium update on the commitment of traders reports. They keep getting worse for Palladium, at least for the shorts. And silver is at a critical technical juncture now, going back all the way to 2008 when the financial world abruptly changed and the Fed went on an inflation spree. The gold to silver ratio is also at a critical juncture right now. And the COMEX gold supply, at least the eligible supply and storage, is back down to where it was before the lockdown crisis began and the supply of gold exploded. And another small lesson in central bank gold hoarding, which is much less meaningful than one would tend to think. Today's silver report is brought to you by Fortuna Silver Mines, symbol FSM. And I wanted to use this little page on its investor presentation, not to make a point about Fortuna specifically, but to make a point about something I've said about the gold to silver ratio over and over again. And I still believe this is true, and it is going to happen at some point where the gold to silver ratio will fall to somewhere around 15 to 1, maybe 20 to 1, maybe 25 to 1, somewhere in that range. It doesn't really make a difference practically, because when we're there, it will be the bell ringing that the end game is in full bloom. Anyway, what is my point here? Well, if you look at how much gold versus how much silver Fortuna has mined in Q2 2022 here, you can see that here we have 64.3 thousand ounces of gold and 1.3 million ounces of silver. Fortuna, of course, is a gold and silver miner ever since its acquisition of Rox Gold last year. And if you take this and you divide this by this, and you have a gold to silver ratio, it is about 20 to 1. And silver ounces versus gold ounces. Not all gold and silver miners have this same ratio, but if you take the entirety of the gold and silver mining industry, it is about 20 to 1, 25 to 1, something like that. And that is the natural monetary ratio for a very good reason, because if both gold and silver are circulating as monies without any impediments from government, without government saying that a currency is pegged to one metal over the other, you have a bimetallic standard, which was historically the freest monetary regime we've had, then the natural monetary ratio would be somewhere between 15 and 25 to 1, as is the natural abundance of these metals. Not exactly that, but somewhere around there. And so why does the ratio change? Why does the ratio go to like 60, 80, 81 where we are now? Because one metal is favored over another. I mean, technically, the dollar is now under a gold standard. Yes, not statutorily, but what gives the dollar its value is that it is exchangeable for gold, and the silver standard was abandoned in 1873. Now, when one metal is favored over the other, you can have a gold substitute in the form of the dollar, which, if honest, would mean that there is no need for silver. But at some point, those gold substitutes are going to break down. And when they do, there will be no functioning gold substitute, and there will be only one choice of what metal to go to for retail transactions, and that will be physical silver. So for a short period of time following the immediate end game, there's going to be a period where silver coins are going to trade physically among the population, because there will be no other choice for retail transactions. And that is when we have to spend our silver stacks. Fortuna shows why we're waiting for a 15 to 20 to 1 ratio in gold to silver eventually, and why economically it will happen at some point, even if briefly. This week we're going to begin with a look into what JPMorgan did this past week in terms of moving eligible ounces to the registry, meaning they're moving them for sale against futures contracts. Andy Schefman pointed out in his latest show with Chris that these ounces are probably already sold, and I can tell you from experience getting ownership of warrants. I did that one time where I took ownership of a 5,000 ounce contract and the warrant was delivered into my account, what you have to do is you have to notify the broker that you're going to stand for delivery before the delivery window opens. Otherwise, they force roll you out of the contract into the next active contract. So you have to notify them with an intent to stand for delivery. And even then, there's a big trouble. So what probably happened was JPMorgan was notified that 2,850 contracts were going to be stood for delivery. So I looked into, first of all, the history of the amount of silver taken off of eligible and into registered. Going back to here is late 2003. This is a 20-year bars here chart. Up bars are, going back into registered, and down bars are taken out. So here you have this, it's hard to see here, but this long, thin bar here is where I drew this red line. And any lines, these are weekly bars, so these are weekly transfers into the registry. The only two times where this was exceeded, this past week was exceeded, was in July 2020, just prior to July 2020, during the lockdown fiasco. When I think it was like something like 15,000 contracts were delivered, so 30 million ounces were moved out of eligible into the registry in this month alone. That was an all-time record. And here you have in 2004, it happened once. I forgot which month exactly or what exactly were the circumstances there, but silver was very, very low at that time, and somebody was taking a bunch of delivery. So this is very, very rare. 14.2 million ounces is an incredible amount. JPMorgan has less than that amount left. If you take into account the amount of silver that it's holding for SLV. So it's running out of silver to sell against contracts. Now, what exactly happened here? I'm going to go to silver first because we've been talking about that. So here you have the actual deliveries for the first day of deliveries, delivery date September 1st. This just came out yesterday, this report. This is the daily report. You see here, this red box that I circled, this is what happened with the first tranche of deliveries. Actually, if we go back here for a second, in the left side here, we have the remaining open interests for the September contract just prior to delivery is 2,979. So the amount of silver that JPMorgan moved to the registry was 2,850 contracts. That's pretty much equals out the 2,979 contracts that are standing for delivery. So JPMorgan was pretty much informed of this a few days before, which is why it moved all that silver. Now we move to here to the silver, to the daily silver delivery here. We see the biggest numbers. The two biggest numbers here are both JPMorgan. The C stands for client account. The H stands for a house account. Issued means they issued the silver for delivery, and stopped means they took the silver for delivery. So here we have 838 contracts on the delivery day, the first delivery day. By JPMorgan house account means the bank itself, for the house account, is delivering into a JPMorgan client account, which took delivery of 999 contracts, some from other parties here. So we see here that maybe Wells Fargo or Merrick's or whoever these people are, or who these banks are, they also issued and they delivered. But my point is that JPMorgan house account delivered all of its 838 contracts, 838 warrants to a JPMorgan client account, which is how JPMorgan knew, because it was probably their brokerage that was handling this stuff. Now, if we move to gold also had a big delivery day. It wasn't an active contract in the sense that silver was, but it was still a pretty active contract. Here we see something pretty interesting. I put a box around these. These are all house accounts. These are all banks. So HSBC, Wells Fargo, Merrick's Capital, Scotia Capital, and Bank of America Securities.